Hi, and welcome here to Psychosomatics for Children. Now, this is something that is new for you if you are a parent or you love working with children or you even want to understand your own childhood a little bit better, then you are exactly where you need to be. Now, who am I? My name is Evette Rose, and I am well known for having written this big book called Psychosomatics of Children. Now, this is a big book of hundreds of medical ailments for children and the psychosomatic stress of that for kids. And yes, of course, for parents, we have the adult version as well. So 679 medical ailments for adults. And all these books you can find on Amazon. Let's talk about what is psychosomatics for children, because I've already talked about the adult version as well. Now, you might be wondering what would be the difference between adult psychosomatics and children's psychosomatics. Well, firstly, adults have had quite a few years ahead of them that they already lived, where they've already experienced life and certain traumas and experiences and layered in certain cognitive programs, where children often are born with ailments. They haven't had a prior reference or experience to life yet. So, where does all of this come from? That is a great question. And that is exactly what we're going to be diving into here today. So, when we just look already at what is psychosomatic for children, this refers to the field of medicine and also psychology that now starts to explore the interaction between a child's psychological and emotional state, as well as their physical health as well. And this now also starts to speak a little bit more of how a child's emotions, thoughts, and also stress levels can impact their physical well-being, including also the onset and the course of illnesses. Now, in this case, their emotions are influenced by people, for example, who could be close to them, and it's also influenced by inherited patterns which can be triggered in their life due to stress. Now, I just also want to make a very big note here and make it very clear right from the beginning that no one is to blame for specific ailments that your child has, or that you as a parent, for example, might have. We can't always control how we react to our environment, but at least we can control the aftermath of it to a certain extent. Now, it's very important here to understand how psychosomatics work and also how the body responds to stress from its environment. Now, to also in this case here know how ancestral cellular memories in the body can actually also be triggered as well. Emotions play a tremendously big role in the relationship, how we feel about ourselves, our lives, and also our environment. And our life experiences and emotions can change our physiology and also how our body biochemically responds internally without us often being aware of it. So, for example, when you feel angry, then you know when you feel that emotion. You can almost sometimes feel the physical symptoms of that in your body. Now, that is because this emotion that you're feeling is changing the physiology of the body because it's so strong and it's so wired. Now, it's influencing also the cellular structure of your body. And often, what you now can feel is this anger that's, for example, now showing up in a specific part of your body. Now, some people might feel it in their heart. They might feel it in their back. They might feel it in their head. It can come forward, for example, as a headache. That is why in math research, all these years, I have put tremendous focus on emotions and not necessarily memories. Because when you feel an emotion, when you have that feeling perhaps that something happened in your past, there is an earlier reference and a program that you are responding to. You might not always be consciously aware of it, but the body, memory, and the subconscious mind knows. Now, it's sometimes, for example, certain experiences that you had, or it can also be inherited experiences. Now, these earlier references that you had in your life plays actually a very important role. So, when certain emotions are felt repetitively over time, they are layered in as strong programs in our subconscious cognitive mind. And it's also programmed throughout our cellular memory and the cellular structure of the body. And that is what I call the emotional body. Now, this is predominantly where my focus is. Now, this is also where we also store a lot of information in relationship to our ancestral experience. And to keep this simple and short and brief, when we, for example, have certain negative, strong emotions that are felt repetitively over time, and especially our ancestors or especially our parents, the program and the memory of that becomes stronger and stronger and almost permanently recorded in the cellular structure of the body. And that's also called the emotional body, the wiring of the body. The more negative the emotion is, the more negatively it changes the cellular structure of the body. And each emotion and trauma are stored in specific parts of the body. And this algorithm is the same for every person and child on this planet because our blueprint is the same. Now, our life experiences adds more complex emotions to prior emotions that we inherited due to our own experiences in relationship to dynamics that we're now playing out. And this can often sometimes slightly move certain emotional programs around in the body, meaning the placement of them. However, not really to a great extent. Now, the more certain negative emotions or psychological patterns are played out from generation to generation, the stronger the memory now can become. And a person can then start to become sensitive to having this underlying psychological pattern that's now been layered in and triggered perhaps due to environmental factors or relationship dynamics and stress. Or you can actually become resilient to it. But there's a big but. Your resiliency will depend on, and this includes your child, on how successfully you or your ancestors, or maybe they in their early little stages of life, were able to overcome a certain traumatic moment or event. Now, whether it was an ancestor or you pass down the solution to that problem to your child. And that's also how we pass down resiliency. Now, this is basic laws of nature and also the human body. Everything in life has a threshold, and that also includes our cellular capacity. Now, there's also a threshold in relationship to our ability to endure certain negative cycles and also to repeat patterns. Now, these repeated patterns or negative thoughts will eventually also reach its limitation and threshold. And this emotional pattern or stress is often stored, as I said, in specific parts of the body. And when this specific pattern is triggered repetitively, or it can take more than one trigger in a person's lifetime just to actually set it off, it can activate generational trauma. And the expression of that can come through in ways such as maybe ancestral memories, emotions that's released from the body cells. Sometimes you just have like this tension, this sensation that just runs through you, but you can't quite identify a specific emotion that's connected to it. That is an excellent example. Now, a person can also experience it as if though, for example, of course, it's ours. We don't always have cognitive awareness why we feel the way that we do. We just accept it, right? It just is. We don't ask all these questions normally. We just act and react. So often, when there's also trauma that ancestors now experience, which cause physical damage to their body, these memories can actually cellularly now be captured and combined with that emotional stress that the ancestor felt at the time of the injury or the impact. And these memories can also be passed down to our cellular memories. Now, once our emotional stress in our lifetime reaches certain emotional intensity or a tone that an ancestor also experienced, it can trigger the cellular memory and the expression of the ancestor in the child's biology, ancestor, or even yours as a parent. So the body's cellular expression can then respond to it in this lifetime, meaning the stress. Now, child sensitivity to parents and environmental stress. Now, it's very important to remember that a child is extremely sensitive to his or her parent's emotional state. And children are biologically designed to be sensitive towards their parent's emotional state. And this is because of biological survival instinctive responses. Now, we all can feel people's emotions, and even though we're not always necessarily related to them. And I'm sure that you've also perhaps, for example, seen someone that's upset. Let me share an example. Or maybe they're depressed, or maybe they're angry. Now, this person was not necessarily showing the anger on their face. However, you could feel it. You just knew that there was something going on and it wasn't right and it didn't feel good. Now, that is because this person's body was transmuting and sending information through the electromagnetic field, which is what I call the biofield of the body. Some people know it as the aura of the body. Now, this biofield then reads the information and it translates it back to you in the emotional language by activating cellular memories that's stimulating now a physiological response in your body. And it's relaying that response also through the messengers and the transmitters and nerve receptors in the body for the body to emotionally translate that into an understandable message by triggering certain prior feelings that you had in relation to that so that you can relate to what is happening. We can't relate to something if we don't have a prior experience of it. Even if we imagine it, there's a prior experience that we are tapping into. Now, let's say, for example, that person's state now also has affected you in a negative way, triggering certain conscious or subconscious memories in you. Now, you might have walked away from that moment feeling maybe very down, very depressed, or maybe even upset. That is the power of unspoken words. Now, our thoughts can also translate through the biofield into the language of emotions. And we can also read and understand and feel our emotions. And we are even more sensitive to people who are biologically that we are now connected to. Even if you adopted a child, that child will be very connected to you because it is part of their karmic soul path and their journey. And your souls are already a match and in alignment with one another. So when a parent feels stress, a child can then also even feel and express that emotional state or that stress throughout their body. And now, there you have it. And this is how emotions and trauma can actually affect a child, whether it is from their environment, friends, family, a parent, or even an activated trauma from an ancestor. And you can find out so much more from Psychosomatics of Children. You can find the book on Amazon or on evettebooks.com. And until next time, be the light that you are.